Shri Guru Charana Saroj Raja Nijamana Mukuru Sudha Paramara Kubara Vimala Jasu Chodai Alachar Buddhin Tanu Janke Sumeron Pavanakuma Siara Alabuddhi Vidya Eumuhi Haru Kales Vika Jai
Namaste, everybody. Welcome. We're still here, but we're not exactly the same here as we were there. I'm on tour this week, so we have a great program for you to hang out with. So let me sing a little first. As usual, I start with this prayer, the Hanuman stone, an invocation to that love that lives within us as our own true nature, the flow of grace. Pranavam Pavanakuma Kalabana Pavaka Gyanagan Jasuhradayaga Basain Ram Sarachabha Atulita Baladham Himshala Badeham Tanujavana Krisham Jnaninama Graganyam Sakalagunanadhana Vanaranamadhishan Raghupati Priya Bhaktam Atajatam Namami Goshpadi Kritavarisham Mashiki Kritarakshasam Ramayana Mahamalaratna Vande Nilatmajam Anjananandanam Dhiram Janaki Shokanashana Kapi Samakshahanta Vande Lanka Bhayankaram Langa Sindho Salilang Salilang Yashokavahi Janakatma Jaya Adaitine Dadahalankan Amamitam Pranjaliranjanayam Manojavam Marutatulya Vegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Vardishtam Vatatmajam Vanardayutamukham Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Anjaneyam Matipatalanam Kanchanadri Kamani Avigraham Parijata Taramula Vasana Bhavayami Pavamana Nandanam Yatra Yatra Raghunath Kirtana Tatra Tatra Kritamastakhanjali Vashpavare Paripurna Lochanam Martinamat Rakshasantakam Balabajaram Gavale Hanuman Ki Jai. So, we're really blessed tonight to have with us two extraordinary guys. One is like one of the leading experts on the Ramayana, Michael Sternfeld, and the other is a Hanuman devotee and scholar and an extraordinary being. So, Philip Lutgendorf. So they're both here with us tonight, and they're going to share the depth of their relationship with Ram and Hanuman. So, first we'll invite Michael to come on. Now, you know, Michael and I have done this project together, Hanuman's Leap of Faith, and Michael's also doing a part of the Ram Dass's Gita course. So he's intimately involved with all our ongoing stuff. Here he is. Hi, Michael.
Hey, KD. Great to be here again. It's just been a few months since we released Hanuman's Leap of Faith. And I just got to say, for starters, I always use images from the Ramayana. I guess that's just the way my mind thinks. But there's the story, and we're going to be telling stories tonight, is when Hanuman is crossing the ocean, and Simhika, the sea monster, she opens her mouth as wide as possible, and he expands the cosmic proportions. She opens her mouth wider, and then he contracts to infinitesimally small and passes through her mouth. And that's what I feel every time I hear you sing. I just pass out. I come out the other side a new person. So
you mean to think about demons? Is that what you're trying to
say? Yeah. You're like Simhika the demon. It's nice to transpose it, but
great.
You know, we thought this would be a really good time to pull in Philip. I hope it's okay to call Professor Philip Lutgendorf Philip. And I was just thinking, you know, what we're going to do tonight, the main focus is going to be to tell stories, particularly of Hanuman. But I was thinking, you know, this is a Bhakti crowd, the people, you know, the Bhakti Shakti crowd. And what I've learned, being more a little bit on the knowledge side, is, you know, when you expand your depth of understanding of the object of your devotion on a deeper level of gyan, knowledge, it really enriches and deepens your sense of bhakti. So that, if I have a sankalpa for tonight, is expand our depth of understanding of Hanuman, all his different facets, even some unusual facets that we're going to explore tonight, and in doing so, enrich our devotion. So without much further ado, I'd like to just give a little background on Philip Lutgendorf, because I've known him for many years. He's actually he's been a professor for the last 33 years at University of Iowa, which is right in my neck of the woods. It's just an hour away from Fairfield, Iowa. So we met maybe 20 years ago when I was working on my audio production of the Ramayana, and he did this fantastic article exploring the cultural phenomena of what happened with the Sagar family's video production that overtook India, and his depth of scholarship, and it was a cultural revelation at that time. So that's how we connected. We've been on and off over the years, and when I was at NKB Ashram this last year, they mentioned, Philip Lutgendorf translated the Hanuman Chalisa, and I said, got to get in touch with him again. So we've reconnected, and I invited him to join us, and I know you two also share a past connection. But I just wanted to show now he's a professor emeritus, by the way, recently retired at University of Iowa from the South Asian Studies Department. But this is his book that I'm going to hold up. Whoops, there we go. Hanuman's Tale, Messages from a Divine Monkey. This is another thing. It's just a fantastic piece of scholarship on Hanuman. not only fantastic stories, but also the rise of the popularity, explores the rise of Hanuman's popularity. And we'll be talking about that a little later. I just wanted to show it. But another one, and I think it's setting the stage, is Philip. As you know, I'm a Valmiki Ramayana guy. I've been focusing on the Valmiki Ramayana for 30 years.
We've been trying to cure you of that.
I know you guys are working. It's going to take a long time to breed it out of me. But Philip recently, over the last number of years, it's a seven-volume translation of Tulsidas Ramayana called The Epic of Ram. Let's see if I can get this closer.
Ramcharitmanas.
Yep, the Ramcharitmanas.
Beautiful.
And he's coming out with the volume 7 very shortly. And one of the things that's unique about it, it's in verse format. Most of the translations are in prose. So I think it's quite significant that he's managed to do it, and with the way it originally was intended, in prose. So I think that pretty much covers it. Philip, I consider a real scholar. If I can think of the 3 Shaktis, I consider you're the Bhakti Shakti. Maybe I embody Kriya Shakti because I think of myself more as a producer, putting out these productions to popularize these Vedic texts in the West. But here is Gyan Shakti incarnate. He really has the depth of knowledge and experience. I know. It's too much in the academic world. Welcome, Philip.
Pranam and Namaste and Jai Sitaram, and thank you. Thank you, Michael and Krishna Das, for inviting me, letting me be part of this. Yep.
Well, we only do it for our own selfish reasons, so we can hang out with you, as they say in the Ramayana.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I went up to Iowa City last week to meet with Philip to talk a little bit about this, he's also a scholar on chai, and he serves the meanest Benares chai. Really good, really good. And he's coming out with a book on chai, but
Eventually. God
anyway,
willing. Yeah.
To get the ball rolling, I'm just curious. I'm going to reverse this question. Is, in the opening section of Hanuman's tale, you talk about this rise of popularity of Hanuman throughout India that's really only been the last few centuries. Maybe you could what's going on? How come Hanuman has come to the forefront so much, either again or now or whatever? How come? Yeah.
Yeah. I can't go into the whole historical picture that I lay out in chapter 2 of Hanuman's tale, but in a nutshell, one of the things I talk about is what devotees say, because people give their own explanation. When you interview Hanuman Bhaktas in India, and what they often say is that he is the Ishta Deva, the deity of choice of the Kali Yuga. And as we perceive ourselves living in the Kali Yuga, the age of discord and confusion and disharmony, which I think some of us experience more and more, right? As being all around us. Hanuman is the go-to guy. He's the person that you turn to. The Chalisa gives many reasons why. He's the guardian of Ram's door. He gets rid of evil spirits. He gets rid of diseases. So he's just a very efficacious deity for this day and age, when it's perceived by many people that some of the more traditional means of accessing the divine seem harder to do or don't work. That's a very kind of within the tradition explanation. I go into, of course, a lot of historical stuff. I mean, it's a simple fact that large images of Hanuman start appearing about 1,000 years ago. And before that, there's really not evidence of sort of worship of him separately from the Ramayana story. But then you start finding freestanding images of Hanuman that suggest that he was being worshipped as a deity in his own right. And those, of course, have increased in recent centuries, and they've gotten bigger. in recent centuries. My first chapter begins with a description of some of the gigantic ones that have been coming up in the last couple of decades, over 100 feet high in some cases. But anyway, I hope that gets at your question.
Yeah, that's one big Hanuman. Yeah, I think there's a contest going on of who has the biggest Hanuman.
Right, exactly. I published an article on that called "My Hanuman is Bigger Than Yours."
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Katie, what's your sense of this? I mean, it's just, everything you do is oriented around Hanuman, it seems, and Neem Karoli Baba. It's just, what did Neem Karoli Baba say about this?
Well, he didn't say a whole lot, but being with him and seeing how the Indian devotees related to him, how they saw him as Hanuman himself, helped us find a way into that devotional feeling, that bhavana. And it was, more than anything, and I think with Hanuman, the actual thing is the accessibility, the easy accessibility. They say he's always ready to serve Ram. He's always available. Whereas some of the other deities are busy doing other things, you might say. There's a funny story about a guy who was dying in the hospital. And Maharaji was walking down, he said, "Doctor's a good man, but he's going to die. Doctor's a good man, but he's going to die." Going on and on. Doctor's a good man. And he walked down the road to visit this other sadhu who was known as Telephone Baba. And he was called Telephone Baba because he had a shawl that he always wore around his neck like this. But it was believed he could talk to the devas, to the gods. He would put the shawl up to his ear like this. "Hello? Hey, what?" Like this, go like this. So Maharaji went over to him and he said, "Doctor's a good man going to die. Call Vishnu." So Telephone Baba gets on the phone like this. Not picking up. Try again. Oh, Narad says he's hanging out with Lakshmi. He's not coming to the phone. So Maharaji reached out. Telephone Baba had these dreads, these jata. He picked, just with no apparent effort, he grabs his by his hair and he holds him up off the ground. He says, "Call Shiva." So he goes like this. Good. And the doctor who had just had a heart attack sits up in bed and he's perfectly okay. So Hanuman makes that connection. They say he's easily contacted, easily pleased, always ready to serve. And being with Maharaji, we experience that directly. Available to everyone, constantly giving, constantly taking suffering away and bestowing blessings. He, as it says in the Hanuman Chalisa, which is a hymn to Maharaji, you wander just distributing alms to devotees. That's all you do. You just wander distributing blessings. So.
Yeah, I can experience that, the shift for me, having been a real Ram devotee for what it is now, 29 years, and then finally waking up to the possibility of transferring some of my attention to Hanuman. And it's a whole new ball game for me, because Ram, as one enlightened kind of guy that I was once hanging out, he said, when Ram comes into the room, there's so much being. It's just wholeness, absolute wholeness. Ram Brahm Paramarat Rupa, embodiment of totality. Hanuman, who is extraordinarily powerful, he's the incarnation of Shiva, but still, he's so much more accessible. There's just something about his personality that he's an embodiment of a deity, a deity who's so accessible on a personality level. Like you would like to hang out with Hanuman. I don't know if you could handle hanging out with Ram.
Indeed. My book starts with one line from Tulsidas. More mana prabhu asa visvasa, ram te adhika rama karadasa. In my mind, Lord, there's this conviction that Ram's servant is greater than Ram. himself.
Mm.
And I use that as the epigram for the whole book. It's the theme, really, that explains Hanuman's, as you say, accessibility and universality.
Mm.
Yeah.
Speaking of referencing, you just referenced the Tulsidas, your Tulsidas translation in Valmiki. In our conversation last week, you made some very interesting contrasts between Valmiki Ramayana and Ramcharitmanas, and just especially in terms of fleshing out Hanuman's personality. Maybe Philip, you could just say a few words about that.
Yeah, well, do you want the ones that are on the record or the ones that are off the record, Michael?
Off the record, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm a scholar of Tulsidas, and I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, although I've studied some Sanskrit. And but I love the Valmiki Ramayana as much as the next person, and admire it, and as much as Tulsidas did. Of course. But they're very different. And, Tulsidas is much more interested in bhakti. And Valmiki is interested in a lot of other things. There's a devotional side to it as well, but he's interested in dharma, particularly, and kingship, and the, ideal society. And various things that really Tulsidas is not much interested in at all. He's just interested in love for Ram and devotion to him. So you end up having a very different focus. And Tulsidas also assumes that his audience kind of knows Valmiki, or they'll find out about Valmiki from a storyteller, a good storyteller, who's chanting the Ramcharitmanas and then expounding on it. So he doesn't bother with a lot of things that Valmiki goes into. And personally, as I told you last week, to my taste, much as I like the Sundarakand of Tulsidas, the Sundarakand of Valmiki is way more complex and psychologically interesting. The portrayal of Hanuman's personality, which you both have tried to bring out in your audio series, the complexities of Hanuman's psychology, as it were, comes across very vividly in Valmiki, and I give him full points for that. And Tulsidas compresses it a great deal and leaves out a lot.
Yeah.
We don't get the picture. I think some of what you're going to tell us tonight, some of what you're going to share from the audio, Michael, is some of that psychology. Like when Hanuman, for example, doubts himself, which he does frequently in Valmiki, and I can't offhand think of any instance in Tulsidas where he does.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about what the differences in the two Ramayans. One thing I think of is that Valmiki wrote in a different age.
Mm-hmm.
And people, their psychology was much more, for lack of a better word, purer. There was less defilement of the mind and the emotions, and they could relate to, they could experience Rama that way.
Mm-hmm.
But in this age, in this Kali Yuga, our attention is distracted. We can't concentrate. We're all over the place. We needed a different avenue into that love, into that story. And Tulsidas gives us that. I think that's one thing. Just a different age, different language, really, or that's spoken, different mental concepts.
Yeah, and of course there is the belief that Tulsidas is somehow a reincarnation of Valmiki, who has come back to retell the Ramayana for the Kali Yuga.
Right, yeah.
And Philip is going to be sharing a story that I think impacts that. Even there was maybe even someone before Valmiki. We'll find that out shortly. But it's interesting just that The one thing I love about the Ramayana, why it's kept my attention for 30 years now, since I started about in 1991, is when I first said, this is it. I'm going to devote myself to the Ramayana. Is I feel that it has this vertical depth. It has this vertical depth that takes you down to this absolute level of life, because Ram is Brahm, totality. It's wholeness on the move. You learn you learn what totality is. You learn what Brahman is, and how Brahman could be incarnated in a human form and move through nature and transform nature with the combination of the Shakti of Sita and how they move together. So that's the vertical depth of the story. But I find it fascinating. So in that sense, I'm a real purist. I just, want to just go and work with the unabridged text of the Valmiki Ramayana. But then I absolutely adore this horizontal spreading of the Ramayana, which constantly recreates itself again and again. Like the line from the Bhagavad Gita, curving back on my own nature, I create again and again. And the Ramayana does that, meaning in every time, in every age, in every different civilization, Southeast Asia, constantly reinventing itself, even to modern times, like with the Sagars and their video series, and even like Sita Sings the Blues, which I find a tour de force of creativity. So I love the vertical depth, but I love the way that Ramayana has enough, I call it universal values, embedded within it, that it can adapt to any time, culture, place, civilization, and tell a story that's relevant now. That's miraculous for me, that the Ramayana has that potentiality, that Shakti power embedded in its nature. You can comment on that, or we can just go on.
Are we going to get to the stories?
I think it's time to get to the stories, but we need to prepare ourselves to get to the stories, which is Krishnan Das, are you ready to do another chant?
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe Hanuman Chalisa?
Yeah. Can do it.
That'll get us ready to go into the storytelling hour right after this.
Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamanu Mukuru Sudhar Varano Raghubara Vimala Jasu Chodayaku Palachari Buddhihin Tanu Janke Sumeron Pavan Kuma Siaram Balabudhi Vidya De Mohin Hardu Kale Sabikar Siavara Ramachandra Padajay Sharanam Jaya Hanuman Gyana Guna Saga Jai Kapishati Loka Ujjala Ramaduta Tulita Baladama Anjani Putra Pavana Sutana Mahavir Vikram Bajrangi Kumati Nirvara Sumati Kesangi Kanchana Varan Viraja Supesa Kanana Kundala Kunchita Kesa Hatha Bajra Dvacha Viraja Kande Munja Janeru Saja Shankara Suvana Kesari Nandana Teja Pratapa Mahajagabanda Vidyavan Guniyati Chatu Rama Kaja Karibe Koatu Prabhu Charitra Sunibe Korasya Rama Lakana Sita Manapasya Sukshma Rupa Dharesya Hindekava Vikata Rupa Dhare Lanka Jara Bhima Rupa Dhare Asura Sanhari Ramachandra Ke Kaja Samvar Lai Sanjeevan Lakana Jiyaye Shri Raghuvira Harashirlai Raghupati Kinhi Bahut Baraye Tumam Priya Bharatai Samabhai Sahasabadan Tumaro Jasagavan Asakahi Shri Pati Kanta Laga Sanakadika Brahmadi Munisa Narada Sharada Sahita Ahis Yamakuver Digapala Jahante Kabhi Kobida Kaisake Kahante Tuma Upakara Sugriva Hinkinha Rama Melaya Rajapadalina Tumaro Mantra Bibhishanamana Lankeshwara Bhai Sabba Jagajana Yuga Sahasra Jojana Paramanu Ilyotahi Madhura Palajan Prabhu Mudrika Mele Mukamahi Jaladilangi Gaye Achara Janahi Durgamakaj Jagat Ke Jete Sugamanu Tumare Tere Ram Duare Tumarakavare Hotana Agya Vinna Perzare Sab Sukla Hai Tumhari Sharana Tumara Chakahu Apan Teja Samaro Ape Tinon Lokaham Katinkambe Bhutta Pesasha Nakatan Nahi Ave Mahavira Jabanam Sunave Naseroga Hare Sabapira Japat Nirantara Hanumatabira Sankartate Hanuman Churave Manakrama Bhachana Dhyana Jolave Sabapararama Tapasvi Raja Tina ke kaja sakala tumasaja Or manorat jo ko vilave Sove amit jivan palapave चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियार। साधु संत के तुम रखवारे असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे। अष्ट सिद्धि नौ निधि के दाता असवर दीन जानकी माता। राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दास। तुम्हारे भजन राम को पावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे। अंत काल रघुवर उड़ जाई जहाँ जन्म हरे भक्त कहाई। और देवता चितन डरई हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई। संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमेरे हनुमत बलबीरा। जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई कृपा करो गुरुदेव की नाई। जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई छुत ही बंदी महासुख। जोया पर हनुमान चालीसा होया सिद्धि साकी घड़ीसा। तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा कीजे नाथ हृदय मंदिर। पवन तनय संकट हरण मंगल मूर्ति रूप सिया राम। राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसउ सुरभूप। सियावर रामचंद्र पद जय शरण। मंगल मूर्ति मारुतनंदन सकल मंगल मूल निकंदन। मंगल मूर्ति मारुतनंदन सकल मंगल मूल निकंदन। श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। 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 सीताराम सीताराम जय जय सीताराम। 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 श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। 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 Syavara Ramachandra ki jai. Pavana Sutta Hanuman ki jai.
I think we're got that good settled field now to dive into bedtime stories, I guess. Let's put it this way. Bedtime stories is kind of like retiring into the self. So what we're going to do now, I'd like to just give just a little context of, we've been, as Krishnadas mentioned in the beginning, we collaborated on this production, which is, once again, I'll be my little show and tell here. This is, let's see, Hanuman's Leap of Faith. It's a digital production, so this is the closest I can get to a book cover. There we go, Hanuman's Leap of Faith, which has 40, harnessing the power of love and devotion in our life, 40 passages of Hanuman's great adventures from the epic Ramayana, bringing us to the threshold of the divine. So it's interesting. I pulled out 40. I went through and with Krishnadas pulled out these 40 passages, everything Hanuman says, does, and thinks in the Ramayana. Oh, and by the way, must give credit here, is we called it a Hanumayana. And where did I get that term? Philip was the one who first put that out in Hanuman's tale. Luckily, I forgot about it, and I thought that I'd come up with it myself, but it's from Philip. Interestingly enough, now to parallel that, independently, because Hanuman's tale, Philip's book on Hanuman, he has 40 stories also, which is interesting. There's 40 branches of Veda and Vedic literature. It's interesting we've come up with this 40 connecting to the Chalisa. Anyway, so we're going to each tell 3 stories from, I'm going to play some audio clips from the Hanuman's Leap of Faith, and Philip's going to tell some stories from Hanuman's tale. Do you want to say a little bit about your sources, Philip? Because, it's not just Valmiki and Tulsidas. We're going...
Well, no. And so I deliberately chose non-Ramayana sources. So my Hanumayana goes, Hanuman's story begins before the Ramayana story and it ends after the Ramayana story because he goes on living, on earth. So I deliberately chose stories that are kind of extra Ramayana and are not found in the standard Ramayana versions that most of us are familiar with, particularly Valmiki and Tulsidas. So and many of them are they're folk tales, but I drew on 17 Hindi language books, texts on Hanuman, the kinds of books generally that you can buy in little religious bookstores in Benares or Haridwar or Vrindavan, popular books, but a couple of sort of scholarly Hindi books as well, and then 2 English books of the same type, devotional books. So that's where I took my stories from. They're all stories that are in wide circulation in India today. And quite a few of them are rather fun, actually. And as you'll see, I picked a couple of those for retelling today.
Great. Before we dive in, KD, do you have anything to say? I mean, I know when I was working with KD on Hanuman's Leap of Faith, the main thing we did was he would tell me stories. That's expanded my frame of reference on Hanuman, just listening to KD. And you have so many sources on Hanuman stories also, I guess mainly from Maharaji.
Like I say, it was little thing. One story Maharaji told, actually Dada told me this story. Dada was one of Maharaji's great devotees. Dada lived in Allahabad, and Maharaji would usually spend the winter there in his house. Mm-hmm. And one time they went to Chitrakoot, and they went up to Hanuman Dhara, which is this big mountain in Chitrakoot. And they got up to a place called Sita Rasoi, Sita's kitchen. And supposedly this was a spot where Sita and Ram and Lakshman lived, and this area was where Sita cooked the food and everything. And there's a little stream coming out at the top of the hill. And the story is that Hanumanji landed there after burning Lanka, and he smashed down on the top of the mountain, and the stream came out, and he cooled himself off. His body was very hot after burning Lanka. So Maharaji was sitting there, and he says to Dada, he said, Hanumanji came here to cool off after burning Lanka. And then Dada told me, Maharaji then said, almost under his breath, he said, but Hanumanji was always at peace. So these two things are really very important to me when it comes to feeling about Hanuman. On one hand, he's completely active, serving, ready to do whatever has to be done. But on the other hand, he's always at peace because he never identifies with being the doer. He says Ram is the one who does everything. He's the perfect servant. There's no me left in there. It's just very powerful. It's the epitome of devotion, wisdom, and realization.
Yeah, that's the big three. It's beautiful. So we've chosen some stories, Philip and I, today, and we just confirmed this morning, that are not your average Hanuman stories.
There is no average Hanuman.
There is no average Hanuman. So maybe you should go first, Philip, with that. I think the one that you mentioned to me this morning.
The stones one?
Oh, I was thinking of whichever you feel. I was thinking of the
I was going to start with the stones one.
Okay, go ahead with the stones.
These are, so to say, in chronological order. So this little incident occurs while the monkeys are building the causeway to Lanka, right? Which I'm assuming our audience knows basic Ramayana, right? Okay. So the monkeys are building this causeway to the island of Lanka to go and fight the battle and rescue Sita. And of course, the two of the monkeys, these brothers Nala and Nila, have been given magical powers by the gods where they can cause stones to float on the water. And that's how the causeway gets built. And Rama is very impressed by this. In this story, Rama sees the floating stones and he's amazed, and he says, wow, how are you guys doing that? And the monkeys say to him, well, it's by the power, it's by your grace, and it's by the power of your name. And Rama thinks to himself, well, gee, if my name has so much power that it causes stones to float, shouldn't I be able to cause stones to float myself? So he goes off to a secluded spot, and he picks up some stones on the ocean shore, and he kind of gently, places them on the water, and they immediately sink, of course, the way stones do when you put them in the water, which is, what Ram had always experienced before. And he does it again, and the same thing happens, and he's starting to feel a little bit nervous, and he looks around to see if anybody has seen him doing this. And he sees Hanuman standing there, because Hanuman always stays as close to Ram as he possibly can and keeps his focus on Ram. So Hanuman is standing there in a reverent position, watching everything. And Rama says to him, have you been here the whole time? And Hanuman says, yes. And Rama says, so you saw what I did? And Hanuman says, yes. And Rama says, well, look, just don't tell anybody about it, okay? and Hanuman says, oh, no, Lord, I intend to tell everybody about this. And Rama is deeply chagrined and, blushes, deep blue, I suppose. But then Hanuman proceeds to give his own understanding of the matter, which is very beautiful. I'll just read as I translated it from one of the Hindi sources. He says, Lord, anything you hold is saved. Anything you abandon is lost. If a stone has the misfortune to slip from your hand, how can it do otherwise than sink? Take it away, Michael. Let's see what Valmiki can come up with.
My Hanuman's bigger than yours.
Right.
I want to hear, Katie, you got to have a comment on this one, because I know you've talked about, in your life, Hanuman has saved you, literally, from sinking, and the Ramayana. And I'm just curious how that translates in your own experience before we move on.
You're talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, Katie. I'm talking to you.
I didn't know I was saved. I'll have to figure that out. Let me see if Hanuman's watching.
Yeah.
I have to say, Philip, I thought that story was going to be more about the power of the name of Ram, being more powerful than Ram,
right,
himself.
And there are versions that put it that way. And of course, there are versions in which the monkeys write Ram on the stones, and yeah, and that's what causes them to stick together and float.
You go ahead, Michael. I don't even know what to say.
All right, so I'll go ahead. So, by the way, I wanted to comment of just that, when Philip and I were thinking, as Philip pointed out, that the Valmiki Sundarakanda has just so much more psychological richness for Hanuman. And I've picked out my first two selections. I'm actually going to be playing them from the Hanuman's Leap of Faith, rather than doing the hard work of being a storyteller, just like Philip just did so beautifully. So we're going to try this high-tech version of just playing it out just through my microphone. But the selections, like this first one I'm choosing, everyone thinks of Hanuman, especially in Tulsidas, as beautiful devotion and embodiment of love and his sweetness and his kindness. But Hanuman can seriously kick butt as well. And this scene is when he's first discovered Sita in the Ashoka garden. And he's had his conversations with her. He's restored her faith, kept her from committing suicide. The guards have seen him, and all of a sudden they go into alarm because they see this giant monkey talking to Sita. And he decides to teach them a lesson. And the secret guard, the Kinkaras, which were like his Ravana's special guard force, Hanuman utterly destroys them, and he's tearing up the Ashoka pleasance, and all of Lanka goes into alarm. Who is this monkey destroying our beautiful Ashoka garden? And Ravana begins to send out his top warriors to go out to meet Hanuman. Hanuman stands on the rampart, and this is a 4-minute clip. I'll play out what Hanuman does, proclaiming basically his power. So let's get ready for some serious Kriya Shakti. Here we go. Let's see if this plays out well.
Canto 43. Hanuman proclaims his purpose. Hanuman, who had come back to his place after slaying the Kinkaras, pondered, I have laid waste the wood, but not pulled down the palatial place of worship of the Rakshasas. Now I shall destroy that formidable edifice also. Resolved on this, Hanuman, demonstrating his strength, flew up to the top, which was as lofty as a peak of Mount Meru. And standing on that lofty mansion, the great ape chief looked like a second sun rising. Bestriding that formidable and splendid mansion in all the fullness of his magnificence, Hanuman looked like the boundary mountain, the Pariyatra. Swelling to a huge size, the son of the wind god, conscious of his prowess, clapped his shoulders provocatively, filling Lanka with the din. The ear-piercing din caused by that clapping brought down the birds from the sky and threw the watchmen of the temple into a swoon. Victory to Ram, expert in the use of missiles, and Lakshman of the immense strength. May King Sugriv, supported by Raghava, be victorious too. I am the servant of Ram, the king of Kosala, whose deeds are flawless. I am Hanuman, son of Maruta, and slayer of the enemy forces. Not even 1,000 Ravanas can make a stand against me on the battlefield when I strike at the foe using rocks and thousands of trees, leaving the city of Lanka in abject distress and making my prostrations to mightily. I shall go back, my object fulfilled, under the very eyes of the Rakshasas. Having addressed these words to the watchman from the top of the mansion, he let off a terrible shout, like thunder, putting fear into the hearts of the Rakshasas. Provoked by that mighty shout, 100 men of the guard sallied forth, armed with various missiles, and with prasas, sword, and hatchet. Those giants surrounded Hanuman and attacked him with maces curiously wrought, clubs with gold bands, and arrows that glittered like the sun. The huge horde of Rakshasas looked like a great whirlpool in the waters of the Ganga as it encircled the foremost of apes. Thereupon, the son of the wind god, roused to wrath, assumed a terrible form, plucked the pillar decked with gold that supported the towering mansion, and whirled it, which looked like the Vajra, swiftly over his head. Fire broke from it, and the mansion was set on fire, and on seeing the mansion burn, the auspicious leader of the ape hosts slew hundreds of Rakshasas, as Indra slew the Asuras with a thunderbolt, and took his stand in midair, and proclaimed, "Thousands of ape chiefs like me, who are mighty and strong, and owe allegiance to Sugriva, have been sent out on this errand. We, and other apes like us, have been scouring the earth, some as strong as 10 elephants, others possessing the strength of 100, while yet others have the strength of 1,000. Some have the strength of a whole Oga, others are the equals of the wind god in strength. There are ape chiefs whose strength is measureless. Accompanied by millions of such apes who use their teeth and nails as weapons, comes Sugriva, who will be the death of all of you. Since you have incurred the inveterate enmity of the mighty lord of the Ikshvakus, neither the city of Lanka, nor you, nor Ravana shall remain on the face of the earth."
Wow.
Rodra.
Right.
That is,
Rudra.
that's the Shakti. Definitely the Shakti aspect.
I wanted to play it just to see, he's so strident, bold, confident, just filled with his pride of strength and unabashedly proclaiming. And what he's doing there is really fulfilling Ram's purpose, because he not only wanted to find the whereabouts of Sita. There was an earlier canto where he was just describing, what else can I do? He was always looking at ways to further Ram's interest. He says, I've delivered the message. I've got the ring from her. I've given her Ram's ring. I'm able to go home, but first I want to put fear into the hearts of the Rakshasas, so they know that I'm just the messenger. If I could do this just as the messenger, what's the rest of the army can do? I mean, he was really strategic in his thinking, and that's just really important, but unabashedly powerful. No pulling any punches. And that's what I love about that particular thing. And it also sets up what I'm going to play for, after Philip goes. You'll see. But did Neem Karoli Baba ever talk about that aspect of Hanuman, KD? The powerful aspect, the terrifying form aspect?
There's a funny story. One day at Kenchi, at the temple, Maharaji asked the chokidar, the guard, to close the gates early. So the gates were closed and locked. And then Maharaji goes into his room. Right after that, a car arrives, and a group of young men get out of the car, and they come to the temple gate. And they say to the chokidar, let us in. And the chokidar says, well, I can't. Maharaji asked me to close the gates, and until he tells me to open them, I can't. And they said, you know us. We're here. We come every week. You know us. Of course I know you, but I'm telling you, this is my job. I can't do it. So they left and they got into their car and they drove away. Maharaji comes running out of his room and he goes across, he goes out of the temple and gets into a car, his Jeep, with Dada, and they go driving at breakneck speed to another temple nearby, Bhumiadar, which was the first temple Maharaji built there in the hills. Maharaji tells Dada to go downstairs and to wait downstairs. And he sits right by a Hanuman Murti by the edge of the road in the dark. Now it's dark. And after a few minutes, you hear there was some sounds coming down the hill. There was a bunch of guys coming down the hill. Yeah, we'll show him. We'll break this temple up. He can't, blah, 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 blah. And they got closer and closer and closer to the temple. And then Maharaji leaps up and he starts screaming and he runs up the mountain after them. And they scattered in all directions like this. And Dada hears this and he goes running up after Maharaji. By the time he gets there, Maharaji's coming down the mountain. He's just too happy. He's too pleased with himself. And he goes, Dada, I scared them, Dada. I scared them so much they pissed in their pants, Dada. And then he looks, there's only one other time that I've heard Maharaji talk like this. He says to Dada, don't they know who I am? Don't they know the battles I've fought and won?
Mm. Mm.
And what battles, what's he talking about, right? We didn't see that stuff. But who knows what, don't they know who I am? Don't they know the battles I've fought and won?
Wow. Well, I think we're ready to move to the next round here. By the way, just as a reference, that was Canto 43 from Sundarakanda in Valmiki Ramayana. Hanuman Proclaims His Purpose is the title of that canto. So now, Philip.
And I also think it's the first time in Valmiki when he calls himself the servant of Ram.
Mm.
Up until that time, he's always identified himself as the servant and minister of Sugriva, I think.
Interesting point.
And it's very significant that he declares that, from the top of this temple in Lanka.
Oh.
Yeah. I have a story that's, as they used to say on TV, now for something completely different. Right. I call this story Service with a Yawn. But it's a delightful story. It's found in almost all of the Hindi sources that I use. So it's quite beloved and popular. And it's also obviously pretty recent. Pretty fairly, within the last 100 years or so, because it involves the notion of a timetable and a schedule and, so sort of, well, you'll see. So the story goes like this. Hanuman, after the battle is all over and they've gone back to Ayodhya and Ram and Sita have become king and queen of Ayodhya, and Hanuman stays and he's given permission to stay and give service, seva, to Ram and Sita, and which he delights in doing. And he delights in doing it so much that he basically does everything. Nobody else is able to get in any seva because Hanuman is always there and always ready to do anything that Ram needs, any little thing. And it gets to the point where even Sita starts to kind of resent it. And Sita and the three brothers, Rama's three brothers, resent the fact that Hanuman is doing all this little personal stuff for Ram all day long, and they don't get a chance to do it. And so one day they have a sort of meeting, a little secret meeting, and they talk about this, Hanuman is just kind of too much there. And they come up with a plan. And they decide, one of the brothers suggested, I think I forget whether it's Lakshmana or Bharat or Shatrughna, but anyway, they come up with a plan. They're going to draw up a service timetable, and they're going to assign all the different tasks that need to be done, from giving Rama his first sip of water in the morning when he wakes up, taking off his sandals at night when he gets ready to retire. Somebody from among them, the four of them, is going to be assigned all of these tasks. And they draw up this very elaborate chart, and they bring it to Ram. And Ram looks it over, reads it over, and Ram notices that Hanuman doesn't appear anywhere on this with any responsibility. And he thinks this is kind of peculiar, but he doesn't say anything. And they say, would you sign it? Put your royal signature on it. And Rama does. He signs it. Then the next day it's announced in the court, and it's sealed with the royal seal, and it becomes the protocol for the day. And the following morning, when Hanuman is waiting at Ram's door, ready to perform, wash his feet or whatever, start performing his seva, he's told, no, you can't do this. It's been assigned to so-and-so. This is Shatrughna is doing that. And, Lakshman's handling this, and Sita's doing that. And it goes on like this. And everything Hanuman tries to do, he's told, no. This task has been given to somebody else. And it's all there in the timetable. Look at it, And Hanuman looks over the whole schedule, and he notices that he's not in it anywhere. And he says to Lakshman, who shows it to him, he says, nobody's covering yawning, are they? And Lakshman thinks, to himself, what the heck? Yawning. Yeah, so he says, no, nobody's covering yawning. So Hanuman says, well, can I do that? So Lakshmana goes, sure. Okay, why not? Yeah, you can be in charge of yawning. So Hanuman says, well, but I want that in writing too. So they make a little special addendum to the schedule, and they bring it to Ram, and Ram signs it and seals it. And now Hanuman has this task. Now, what is it? Okay, in India, when you yawn, it's considered inauspicious. Because you're opening one of the 9 portals of your body involuntarily. And it's possible that an evil spirit, a bhuta or something, might get in that way. So it's customary when somebody yawns that they do what's called chutki, which is snapping the fingers. Trying to do it on camera here. They snap their fingers and they say a name of God, Ram Ram or something. Krishna, Sitaram, whatever. So this is the service that Hanuman proposes to do, that whenever Rama yawns, he's going to be there to do the chutki and avert any evil influence. Now, of course, a yawn might come at any moment. Therefore, Hanuman has to be with Ram all the time and has to be able to see his face all the time and focus on his face all the time. So this is a perfect job for Hanuman. He loves it. And he just follows Ram around, and focusing on him and watching and being ready to do a chutki in case Rama should happen to yawn. So this all goes okay until night, when it's time for Ram and Sita to retire into their private apartment, private bedchamber. And Hanuman is about to follow them in, and Sita says, no, you really can't come in here now. And so then Hanuman is outside the door, and he thinks, now what am I going to do? Because it's night, and that's when people really yawn, And if the Lord yawns and I don't do chutki, I'm not doing my service. And so he decides that he's going to do continuous chutki until the morning, until Rama wakes up, and he's going to repeat the name of Ram. And this suits him very well. So he goes onto a little balcony there in the palace, and he sits down and he just starts going Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, whatever, like this. Now, inside the bedroom, Rama starts yawning because, service has to have a cause, right? So Ram starts yawning, and he starts yawning uncontrollably. He can't stop. He has these one after another, these enormous yawns. So Krishna, I'm going to make you yawn. Yeah. But he has this and it becomes alarming because he's actually getting red in the face and he's having trouble breathing. And Sita freaks out and she calls Kaushalya, Ram's mother, and then Vasishta, the royal guru, comes, and Vasishta calls all the royal physicians, and they start trying to administer remedies. Nobody's ever seen this. It's like he's having a seizure. He's having this kind of attack of yawns. And they can't figure out what's going on, and they can't stop it. And poor Rama is getting more and more uncomfortable and, miserable. And at a certain point, after this has gone on for some time, Vasishta says, "Where's Hanuman?" And Sita says, "Oh, I don't know. He went off. He wanted to follow us in, but I didn't. I said no, and he's gone off someplace. He's probably very unhappy because he's not with Ram." And Vasishta has a hunch, and he goes outside the door and he looks up and he sees the balcony and he sees Hanuman sitting up there doing chutki and going Ram, 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 Ram. And he goes up and he says, Hanuman, come down here quickly. There's something happening. It's serious. And Hanuman comes down with him into the bedroom. And of course, as soon as he comes in and he sees Rama in this terrible state, Hanuman stops doing what he's doing and bows, throws himself, and at Ram's feet and says, "Oh, Lord, save me, save me." And the minute Hanuman stops doing chutki, Rama's yawning stops and his facial muscles relax and he's able to take a deep breath and everybody breathes a sigh of relief. And Sita realizes what has happened and she bows to Ram and she says, "Oh Lord, we have committed a great injustice to your servant and forgive us, and henceforth we will never interfere with any act of service that he wants to perform to you."
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Very sweet.
I mean, I like the way it domesticates all the characters. It gives them, very human personalities and motivations and even little petty jealousies. Who gets to do what for whom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like real life.
Just like real life, yeah.
I really think it's people sometimes think that if you treat these deities in a little bit irreverent way, that it actually makes them less. For me, making them more like on a human level with their full range of emotion makes it more, because then it's more intimate, it's more accessible. These are avatar. He came down, Ram came down in a man's body, and Shiva, or Vayu, as his father, came down in the body of a monkey, and he lives as a monkey, and with his monkey mind that's referred to a lot in the Ramayana.
Well, watch out, Michael, because I'm going to domesticate Valmiki in my third story.
So I'm going to now, that's a perfect segue into this next section. This is perfect for what we're talking about, because this is something that came up in my conversation with Philip last week, is that we never think of Hanuman as doubting himself. And this canto, which is Canto 55, Hanuman is satisfied that Sita is safe. Hanuman has just burned all of Lanka, destroyed almost all the buildings, killed many of the people in the population, and then it hits him. What about Sita? Is Sita safe? How could I do this? So let's get ready. This one's just a little longer. It's about 5 or 6 minutes, but you'll get a flavor of Hanuman, and well, I'm not going to say more. It'll let it speak for itself. Here we go.
Canto 55. Hanuman is satisfied that Sita is safe. Having set all Lanka ablaze, the ape chief of the immense strength quenched in the sea the fire on his tail. As he was looking at the blazing city of Lanka, which had suffered heavy damage, and whose Rakshasa population was in a state of panic, a thought suddenly crossed the mind of the ape Hanuman, and a great fear seized him. He was disgusted with himself as he reflected, "What an outrageous deed I have done, burning down Lanka. Fortunate indeed are those truly great souls whose intelligence keeps anger in check, as burning fire is put out by water. Where is the man who, mastered by anger, will not commit the most heinous crime, even the murder of revered elders? The angry man will insult even the saintly with harsh words, and in his rage he does not mind what he says, however obnoxious it might be. There is nothing that the man possessed by wrath will not say or do. He alone is entitled to be called a man, who ejects anger by patience, as the snake sloughs off its worn-out skin. Fie on me, for the shameless fool that I am! I have done an exceedingly wicked deed in raising this fire, forgetful of Sita, and thus gravely injuring my master. If the noble Janaki has also been burnt along with the burning Lanka, then I have thoughtlessly ruined my master's business. The whole purpose in furtherance of which this enterprise was launched has been frustrated because I failed to protect Sita while burning Lanka. The task I was entrusted with had been all but completed, but succumbing to anger, I have ruined the whole thing. Janaki must be dead, for there is no part of the city, so far as I can see, that has not been burnt down. The entire city has been reduced to ashes. If the object of my coming has been ruined by my folly, the laying down of my life here would be welcome to me too. Now I shall throw myself into the fire, or fall into the jaws of the great fire in the depths of the ocean, or yield my body as a prey to the creatures of the sea. How could I, having ruined everything, bring myself to face alive the sovereign of the apes or those tigers among men? I have indeed demonstrated by my folly in yielding to anger the fickleness of the monkey, which is proverbial in the three worlds. Fie on this chronic restlessness, unbridled by control or steadfastness or fixity of purpose. Though I could have saved Sita, I failed to do that from unreasoning anger. If Sita should be dead, those two will also die. And when they die, Sugriva too will perish along with his kin. On hearing of this, the virtuous Bharat, who loves his brother and Shatrughna, would find it impossible to go on living. When the family of the Ikshvakus thus perishes for a certainty, their subjects will all fall into the harrowing agony of grief. Thus, I should be the cause of this world disaster because my fortune has deserted me and I have forfeited the fruits of Dharma and Artha, being submerged by the tides of anger. When he was thus pondering sadly, there occurred auspicious omens, such as he had seen before, and Hanuman reflected, but who knows? She who is lovely in every limb may have been saved by her own power. She who is herself a power for good could not possibly die, for fire does not prevail against fire. Fire cannot touch the spouse of that righteous soul of limitless puissance, whose virtue is her own armor. Did not fire, whose nature is to burn, leave me unscathed because of Ram's greatness and the fruits of Vaidehi's good deeds? How could she perish, who is the darling of Ram's heart and is as a goddess to his three brothers, Bharat and the rest? If fire, whose business is to burn, and who masters all things and is eternal, does not burn my tail, how could he burn the noble dame? And Hanuman recollected with renewed wonder the mountain of the golden navel showing itself in the midst of the sea. By virtue of her austerities, truthfulness, and wholehearted loyalty to her lord, she might burn fire if she wanted to, but fire cannot burn her. As Hanuman thus dwelt in his mind on the immensity of the good dame's virtues, he heard mighty Charanas saying, "How wonderful this exploit of Hanuman in burning the entire city of the Rakshasas, with its panic-stricken Rakshasa women, children, and old men fleeing in disorder and confusion, and the uproar raised by the populace rebounding from the mountain caves. The city seemed to wail in distress. How amazing that while the entire city, including the ramparts with their watchtowers and gateways, have been burnt down, that Janaki has not been touched by the fire." And Hanuman, seeing those auspicious omens whose truth had been tested again and again, hearing the reassuring words of the sages and regaining confidence, was happy. The ape, who had achieved his cherished object and heard that the princess was unscathed, decided to return after seeing her once again.
Interesting contrast between what we saw in the previous scene that I played out when Hanuman proclaims his purpose with such strident power. And now he's filled with doubt, a telescoping series of self-doubt, going into the fact that his single act is going to be the cause of the destruction of the whole world. A lot of responsibility to put on his shoulders. And yet, it shows us, it takes us on that journey of, as we have often, going into self-doubt of my action that I thought had totally blown it, and then how he listened to these divine omens to restore his own faith. He had just done that for Sita. And now, so you see, this is to me the beauty of it. One, you can say, how could someone so great as Hanuman go through all that self-doubt and permutations in his mind? But if he can do it and come out of it, it helps us traverse that same field.
Yeah, and he goes into what psychologists call, catastrophizing, right? Well, this is going to lead to this, and this is going to lead to that, and that's going to lead, and it's so human.
Yeah, I think we've all been catastrophizing a little bit lately, with what's going on in the world.
It's easy to.
It's easy to. And Hanuman, I feel, shows the way out.
Yeah. He reasons his way out, which is very nice.
Yeah, using that.
Sita is fire; she cannot be burned by fire.
Right. Did Neem Karoli Baba ever talk about that kind of, like, the way we use our minds to dig our own holes and how we dig ourselves out? I mean, is there any stories on that you remember, KD?
Not really. I mean, he would just say to go on repeating the name, and don't think about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
He never taught us to do any practice for the sake of our own spiritual, quote unquote, advancement. He said, love everyone, serve everyone, remember God. He said, when I was going to kill myself in India, I was having a nervous breakdown in the temple right there. He said, what are you going to do? Jump in the river? You can't die. He said, worldly people don't die. Only Jesus died the real death. What? Why? Because he never thought of himself. There was no me in there anymore, And of course, he's describing Hanuman. He would say Hanuman, Christ, and Krishna, they're all the same, he'd say. Don't think about yourself. Think about others. And of course, all we do is think about ourselves all day long.
Well, my story,
Okay,
and we'll talk about that. You'll see
please
it.
go
You'll
ahead.
see it's a good example. So, it's generally maintained that although the Valmiki Ramayana is the Adi Ramayana, the original Ramayana, and also the Adi Kavya, the first poem, right?
Mhm.
But people will also say to you in India, but actually it's not. Actually, the first Ramayana was composed by Hanuman. So here's the story about this. And of course, it comes out of Valmiki, because in Valmiki, Hanuman tells the Rama story several times to various characters within the story. And he is a great storyteller right from the beginning. And so he develops a reputation for association with the story that seems to have led in quite a few hundred years ago to this story, which I'm going to tell you. So after Sita is banished from Ayodhya to the forest when she's pregnant in the 7th book of Valmiki's Uttarakhand, Hanuman is still there in Ayodhya serving Rama, but it isn't the same anymore. The atmosphere is very sad. Rama immerses himself in his kingly duties, but there's a kind of shadow of sorrow over him. And because Sita has been sent away. And Hanuman feels it very much, and he considers Sita his mother, and he's very unhappy too. And there's not much for him to do. So he goes into the Himalayas, and he finds a kind of a distant mountain summit where there are these huge crystalline slabs, these kind of quartz crystal slabs that you sometimes see in the high mountains. And he begins with his nail, he begins inscribing the story of Ram on these slabs. And he just keeps writing. He goes day after day, and he just keeps writing the story of Ram as he has experienced it. Meanwhile, Valmiki in his ashram, where Sita is living and has given birth to twins, etc., Valmiki is, of course, finishing his version of the story, commanded by Brahma, and he's composed his Ramayana. And he's very happy with it. Brahma has given him deep spiritual insight so that he's able to see everything. Anyway, but somebody comes and tells him and says, Hanuman has written a Ramayana also. And Valmiki says, really? And he's thinking, well, Hanuman was there much of the time, but at the same time, is he a poet? What kind of a composition could this possibly be? And so one day, somehow they meet, and Valmiki asks Hanuman about this and says, is it true you've written the story of Ram? And Hanuman says, yeah, I have. And Valmiki says, gee, could I see it? And Hanuman says, oh yeah, of course. And he puts Valmiki on his back and flies through the air to the Himalayas and takes him up to this mountain peak and puts him on a cliff. And Valmiki starts reading this inscription, and it must be a huge thing because it's supposedly a very voluminous telling of the story. And Valmiki is reading and reading and reading and reading, and Hanuman is just kind of nonchalantly sitting there. But he sees that Valmiki has tears streaming down his face. And after some time, he says to him, oh, great sage, is something the matter? What's wrong? Is it bad? Is it, are there a lot of mistakes? And Valmiki says, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so perfect. no one could ever tell the story better than this. And then he says, and of course, nobody's going to want to look at my Ramayana now. And Hanuman looks at him, and Hanuman says, really? Is it like that? And Hanuman puts Valmiki on his back, and he takes his arms, he grows to huge size, and with his incredible strength, he tears the boulders, these crystalline slabs, out of the side of the mountain, rips them out, puts them under his arm in a huge pile, and he flies with them. Valmiki doesn't even have a moment to say anything. He flies with him out over the ocean, and he gets to the middle of the ocean, and he drops the slabs into the ocean, and they fall down with a thunderous crash into the sea and sink out of sight. And Hanuman just says, Jai Shri Ram, as he does this. And then he comes back to land, and he brings Valmiki back to his ashram and sets him down, and Valmiki is crying. And Hanuman says, kind of, now what's the matter? Are you okay? And Valmiki says, what you did, what you've sacrificed, for the sake of my poem. And Hanuman just says, it was nothing. It was just something that I did to pass the time. It's nothing. It doesn't matter. And Valmiki then says, son of the wind, in a future age, I will take birth again, and I will retell the Ramayana as you have done, in the language of the ordinary people, of the common people. And I will be your devotee, and I will worship you, and I will do this in service to you. And of course, this is assumed to be Tulsidas. He's referring to his return as Tulsidas. So,
Beautiful story.
Sitaram. Yeah.
Sitaram.
Beautiful.
Wow. I love going back and forth with these stories, and we're getting close to wrap up, but I have a really short one to play out, which is a perfect last one. Unless you have something to say, KD, I'll play out my last story.
Go ahead.
And this one, when I said that we went through the entire Ramayana and pulled out every Hanuman passage, I was 100% certain that the last passage in Uttarakhanda, where they talk about Hanuman, says at the battle is over, Rama is crowned king, Sita is by his side. This is before Sita is banished. And Sage Agastya comes with a whole retinue of sages. And this goes on for, I don't know how long, weeks, months, where every day Sage Agastya is telling Ram and his brothers and Hanuman and Vibhishana and Sugriv, all of them are there, they've stayed on, telling them stories of how great Ravana was and how even the gods couldn't believe that Ram defeated him. And then they're even more amazed that Ram and Lakshman was able to defeat Indrajit, who was actually even more powerful than Ravana. That was his son. So finally, I don't know how many times Ram says goodbye to Agastya. Finally, Agastya goes home, and Ram decides to say goodbye to his closest allies. He says goodbye to Sugriv, and then Vibhishana, and then Hanuman. So this short clip that I'm going to play is really Ram's final words to Hanuman, and it starts with a little bit on Vibhishana, and then it goes right into Hanuman. So here we go. This is about a 3-minute clip.
Having said this to Sugriva, Ram embraced him repeatedly, and he said to Vibhishana in pleasing words, "Rule Lanka righteously. I know you are devoted to Dharma, and you are greatly loved by the Rakshasas who live in the city, and by your brother Vaishravana. Never incline your mind to unrighteousness, O king.
Kings endowed with intelligence rule their kingdom in all security. And think of me and Sugriva always, O king, with affection. Go home now, without a care. The apes and the Rakshasas applauded Ram, repeatedly saying, "Well said, well said." Intelligence, valor, marvelous powers, and supreme sweetness of disposition are innate to you, O Ram, as to the self-create. When they all said this, Hanuman made his prostrations to Ram and prayed, "May my friendship for you be ever unswerving, O king, and also my devotion. And O valiant one, may my love never be given to anyone but you. And I have no doubt that I shall inhabit this body so long as Ram's story is current on earth, O heroic one. The Apsarasas will of a certainty sing to me your life and deeds, O scion of the Raghus, O first of men. Hearing that nectar-like story of your doings, my lord, I shall be freed from the pain of intolerable longing, as the wind carries off a wisp of cloud." When Hanuman said this, Ram got up from his throne and embracing him affectionately told him, "It shall be as you wish, O first of the apes. So long as my story is heard on earth, so long shall your fame last, and life remain in your body. And the story of my deeds will be known so long as the hills laugh. If I gave up my life for any one of your acts of friendly help, I should be in your debt for all the others. Let all that you have done for me remain an undischarged debt with me, for only in peril does a man who has done another a good turn look for its requital." Then, taking from his own neck the pearl necklace that shone like the moon, with a cat's eye for pendant, he put it round Hanuman's neck. With that splendid necklace resting on his chest, the ape shone like the great golden mountain with the moon on its shoulder. And having heard what Raghava said, the monkeys rose up and made repeated prostrations at his feet, and departed. Sugriva was locked with Ram in a long embrace, breast against breast, and so was Vibhishana, the righteous soul. All of them shed tears of grief. With streaming eyes, they who could not speak for the tears that choked their throats almost fainted with grief at having to part from Raghava. Showered with kindnesses by the high-souled Raghava, all of them departed to their homes as men leave behind the bodies they have tenanted. The Rakshasas, bears, and apes, making their prostrations to Ram, prosperer of the Raghus, went back like those who had lived long in one place, their eyes filling with tears of parting.
So who says Valmiki Ramayana is not devotional? It's beautiful, just beautiful. Departing of the connection. And as long as Ram's story is told, Hanuman will be here. Hanuman will always be with us as long as Ram's story is, and it appears that that Ram's story is not going anywhere. Thanks to Krishnadas singing its praise and Philip writing his scholarly works and me beating the drum, I hope, for in our own, each in our own way, and everyone in their own way, beating the drum and snapping their fingers. So you guys have to have something to close with on this before we wrap tonight, and hopefully KD will sing again for us.
Let me just read you this. I guess this is this shloka. I don't know where it's from. Maybe you know where it's from. It describes Hanuman. It says, Hanuman saha Mahadeva Kala Sadashiva Muktido Mukti Kaivalya Muktido Sarva Kamada. It says, Hanuman is that Mahadev, Mahakala, the eternal goodness, the blissful one who bestows mukti by allowing seekers to merge into his own state, as well as bestowing the enjoyment of all one's cherished objects of desire. I think this is just so perfect. You know, it's exactly what it felt like to be with Maharaj. He allowed us into the room where love lives. And of course, our own minds would take us out of there almost immediately, but then he would bring us back again and again. And but the idea that the description of how Hanumanji gives that liberation by allowing us to merge with him, and he's always turned to Ram. So when we merge with him, we also. So.
It's beautiful.
And also the idea that in the process, he also allows us to satisfy the desires that we cherish, that we need to satisfy. It's not a renunciate situation, at least at the beginning, you know, as it develops. There's certain things you need to have, you know, and got to have place to sleep, food, cable TV, you know, money to take care of yourself and the people who you're responsible for. And he allows all that. It's part of the process. It's not bad to have desires. It's not bad to satisfy desires within a certain situation, you know. And Maharaji always, it was like that. It was like that. So, you guys have anything to say about that shloka? Any of you heard it before? You know where it comes from?
I don't know that shloka.
Yeah. I don't know either. It seems like it's Sanskrit.
Yeah, it's Sanskrit.
But I have no idea where it comes from.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know, it's funny because you read that, and I had picked out something that just came today from the Gita course, which it looks like this is from Path to God by Ram Dass. And it really just underscores what you said in a slightly different way from that shloka. It said, the point of all the bhakti practices is to kindle that kind of love and then divert it towards God or towards the Guru. One can connect it with some concept of a supreme being, the universe, Brahman, or one can find some form on the physical plane to love, someone to use as a doorway, and eventually, through the love, to pass beyond. I'm just inserting that. To me, that's Hanuman here. So whatever the form, we open our hearts to it. We use chanting, we use meditation, we use yoga, we use any and all of the practices of bhakti devotion to fan the intensity of our love for the being who has awakened our heart. And to me, that's just a beautiful description of what Hanuman does for so many people. Philip, do you have something to wrap it up with?
Not really, no. I think you've put it well. And that last Valmiki passage recalled the line in the praise poem that Krishnadas began with, yatra raghunatha kirtanam, wherever Rama's praises are sung, you are there.
Yeah.
Hanuman is there. And I always thought about that when I was teaching Ramayana, to students at the university. I would say to students, well, people who love the Ramayana in India, they would say that Hanuman is here in the room right now because we're talking about the Ramayana. And
when I recorded the Ramayana, the original audio production, the 75-hour mega production I did of the entire unabridged Valmiki Ramayana, I didn't do one recording session without setting a seat for Hanuman and inviting him.
Yeah,
be there. And I think that's why the production has some Shakti, because Hanuman Shakti was in the production.
Yeah, and the Ramayanis do that in India. They make an asana for Hanuman often in the on the platform or wherever they're speaking. Yeah, nice.
And even today, I just had my little Hanuman. This is what I put in my pocket there.
Ah.
This is ghost. And you want to know something, that when they finally did the first Diwali celebration in the White House, they gave this to Obama, something like this to Obama. He's been carrying it in his pocket for years. A little Hanuman Murti.
He's been carrying when someone gave it to him, because in Indonesia, where his family comes from, Hanumanji's worshipped.
Yeah.
He has one little metal one he carries.
Yep.
So, you want to sing to close the?
Sure, I'll sing a little bit. Karuna Sagar Kripanidhan He Bajrangi Jaya Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan Jaya Bajranga Bali Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan Jai Siya Ram Jai Baba Hanuman Sankatamochan Kripanidhan Jaya Bajranga Bali Hanuman Lala Langote Lala Nishan Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram 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 Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Sitaram 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 Jai Jai Sitaram Taram Sitaram 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 Jai Jai Sitaram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram 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 Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. So, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. These ancient traditions are paths into our own hearts. And they are living paths, living practices, living realities, always present for us. And if we know anything about a path at all, it's only because of the great beings that have gone before us. Out of their love, out of their kindness, they left some footprints for us to follow. So, in the same way that they wish for us, in the same way that they wish for us, we wish that all beings everywhere, all of us be safe, all of us be happy, that all of us have good health and enough to eat. And may we all live in peace and at ease of heart, with whatever comes to us in life. Namaste. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As they say in India, Ram Ram.
Sitaram.
Sitaram.
Ram Ram Sitaram.
Ah